Welcome to this presentation on human resource management. This is a very broad chapter uh, which covers most of the information that is covered in the human resource management discipline. Therefore, what we're going to try to do is to highlight some of these processes and just to give you uh, a clear perspective of what human resource management is all about. But keep in mind, we might not be able to cover everything because remember, this is another discipline, and therefore, talking about this in a few minutes or an hour is basically just giving us a snapshot of what it entails in human resource management. So, in this presentation, I want to focus on the three objectives. One is first of all is to understand what human resource management is. And then we try to explain the importance of human resource management and then describe some of the current issues in managing human resources. We're also going to describe the human resource processes. And then in our conversation discussion, we are also going to identify some of the challenges facing human resource management. So, again, this is a very broad chapter that gives us a snapshot of an entire discipline. So, when you're talking about human resource management, what we are referring to here is a process. Remember, there's a discipline, so it's a process of determining the human resource needs of an organization, and then we undertake recruitment, we undertake selection, development, motivation, evaluation, compensation, and scheduling employees so that we can achieve the organizational goals. So again, you can see it's a very broad definition or explanation, but the point I want to bring out from the definition is that it gives us the processes or identifies the processes that are involved in human resource management. So when you're talking about human resource management as a discipline, then some of the things that we are referring to is that recruitment, selection, development, motivation, evaluation, compensation, and scheduling. And all those processes, uh, when you study human resource management as a discipline on its own, then what you do is you cover those issues as single chapter. For example, you'll cover a chapter on recruitment, you'll cover a chapter on selection, you'll cover a chapter on development of employees, chapter on motivation, you'll cover a chapter on evaluation, which is basically the assessment or performance appraisal. You'll cover a chapter on compensation, which covers benefits, and then you cover a chapter on scheduling and any other benefits, so you'll see these being individual chapters. That's what I was telling you. Our discussion in this part will only be a small explanation or a small overview of what it entails in the chapter. So if you want to learn more about these issues, then taking a human resource management course will give you a more detail of what human resource management is. But that's not our goal here. Our goal is just to understand what human resource management is and see and show some compare with what you've gone through either at your workplace and see whether there's some similarity between what you see here and of course what you experience at the workplace. Now, human resource management as a discipline has evolved over time. And for example, you can see some time back, the US was more into manufacturing, so the economy was manufacturing based, but now we moved away to service and high tech. And therefore, because of the changes in the nature of the economy, it also brings out the necessary changes in terms of human resource management. For example, with the change to service industry, then it means then the skill set of employees also changes. So now we're looking at employees who are supposed to be more technical, having technical skills. So just keep in mind the changes in the economy has also an impact on human resource management. Now, if you think about human resource management, I know you can think this being like, think about the small businesses or organizations and the big corporations. Now, human resource management as a process can be applied to any of the business, large or small. The issue is just going to be how it is done. So you'll find that the way it is done in a small business will be different from the way it is done in a large organization. In a small business, most likely you'll find somebody who's a manager for that organization will then be the one performing most of these functions, most of these HR functions, and that is the recruitment, selection, development, motivating, evaluation, compensating, and scheduling. In large organization, what you'll find is they end up having one department, human resource management department, or a personnel department that will then undertake some of these functions, even though some functions will still rest with the individual departments, even in that large organization. So, if you are a manager in a large organization for a department, let's say you're a marketing manager, then you'll still undertake some of these HR functions, but some of them they're going to reside with a human resource management office. So just keep in mind, it's done different depending on the nature of the organization. So HR as a discipline has its own challenges, and you could agree with some of these challenges that you can have shortages of employees. In some sectors, that is true. It also, we have unskilled workers. That's also true. We have uneducated workers. That's true. Again, that affects some industries and others. There's a shift in workforce composition. Think about women, family, religion. That's also true. So the question is, how is this a benefit to HR and how is this a challenge to HR? You're talking about things to do with the daycare, for example, being an issue to be addressed by the employer. So think from that perspective. We are talking about laws and regulations that sometimes keep on changing. And one example, for example, is the minimum wage. And I'm sure you have heard the society push for higher wages. Again, if that one has to happen, then of course what you'll see is a challenge to HR or to organizations. But there are so many regulations that affect human resource management, and these regulations will affect almost every aspect of every process that you see. So you'll find that we have regulations that affect recruitment, we have regulations that affect selection, we have regulations affecting compensation. So you'll find that regulations affecting some of these processes along the way. There is also single parent and two income families, again, as a challenge to HR management. So, apart from just a shift in workforce composition, we're talking about the single parent or and two income families. Of course, attitudes towards work has changed now. Again, that's changing attitudes affect human resource management. Again, it also affects motivation. For example, that will tie in into the motivation aspect. We have seen companies downsizing or reducing their hours. And a good example is what we saw or what we are still seeing during the COVID 19, the commonly known as the coronavirus. So you can see what companies are doing. So some are trying, of course, to uh, let employees work from home, which again, that becomes an issue of scheduling. So we have seen companies trying to make this possible where employees can work from home. And we have seen some companies also trying to lay off or trying to cut hours for employees. Because again, remember, the issue is to make it safe for everybody, and also because there's reducing sales in business activities, and therefore, because of that reason, they have to make some changes. So again, you're going to see changes in regarding, of course, unemployment and so on, and skill set and so. So those are basically some of the challenges we have to face as a nation, especially during this time. So again, the truth is it is going to affect human resource management to some extent. We have also seen overseas labor pools. Again, that's where low wage, which becomes either advantage to the company in terms of cost, but also it also creates unemployment for the other individuals in other sectors. So all in all, that challenges in human resource management. So if you're an HR manager, the goal you're trying to do is to ensure that you undertake the HR processes at the same time is to minimize some of these challenges. So to try to address the human resources, so if you're a CEO, a chief officer for human resources, or you are a manager in charge of human resources, or we have that department that I was referring to. So if that's the case, then HR planning process is very key to any organization. You want to be able to plan for your human resources. That is today, tomorrow, and in the future. And in the future could be you want to have a 5 year plan, a 2 year plan, a 10 year plan. The point is you have planned for your human resources. And this involves several steps. Of course, the first step for us is to be able to prepare a human resource inventory. Basically, what we're doing here is if you're a company, you already have employees in your organization. So what you're doing is you're taking an inventory of who they are, but your focus, of course, is into the skill set. The skills that they have, because you might use their skills in the future. So you're trying to understand their skill set, or recording or having an inventory of their skill set. Let's say it could be a case of education requirements. You want to also have that, so that this will guide you in trying to restructure a strategy for the organization. You want to prepare a job analysis. Basically, is the with the job analysis, what you're doing is you're trying to understand the what people do in the jobs they hold. So in other words, you're trying to figure out the job description and the job specific, because those are basically the two output that comes out of a job analysis is the job description and the job specifications, where the job specifications identifies the minimum requirements for a particular position. Three, you want to assess the future HR demand. So you're looking into the future. Remember we said a 5 year plan or a 2 year plan or a 3 year plan. And therefore, what you want to do is to assess your HR needs, your HR demand, of course, in the future, which could be in 5 years and so on. So HR managers must be proactive to anticipate future demands of the organization. So you want to look at what will the company need in the next 3 years or 2 years in terms of the human resources or human capital. Then four is to assess the future HR supply. So you have identified the need in the next 3 years as part of step three. In step four is to look at the supply side. So we have identified the demand. What about the supply side? The goal you're trying to address here is just to ensure that yes, I have the demand, and the demand is, let's say you need 20 people with this kind of skill set, and you look at the supply side to try to figure out whether the supply side has enough people to fill the demand or no. That's basically what you don't figure out in this particular process. So you look at in terms of skill set that you require, the market is providing today. So that will give you a picture of where you need to be or what you need to do as far as human resources is concerned. So that will give you a, a plan that you can try to address today's. So you have a plan, a 2 year plan based on your inventory, the, the employees that you have, the skill set, and the demand and the supply. Then from there, you establish your strategic plan that is going to address now the key elements or the key processes of human resource management. So you're going to have a plan that's going to address recruitment. How do you go about it in trying to fill that gap? Selection. How do you go about in trying to fill that gap? Compensation, development, and so on and so on. So again, if you have employees, if you look at the demand and the supply and your inventory, it could be you have really enough employees with the skills that you require in the future. So in that case, in terms of recruitment, you're going to undertake an internal recruitment because you already have employees who will be able to fill position in the future. But it might also require you, maybe if you're going to move the current employees to the future positions, then you might be required to have a plan that you're going to address by hiring maybe the current employees to fill the current positions. Again, could be that way. So my point I'm trying to say here is that the planning aspect is a very key important when it comes to human resources. So then we undertake the hiring process, which I don't want to spend so much time on this because that's self-explained in the text. But the hiring process will include recruitment, selection, training, and development. So again, some of you work for organizations, and therefore you have gone through these processes. So, for example, you have been interviewed, you did a background check, you're given a job and you're given probationary, which is 90 days. You have to work for 90 days, and 90 days we haven't confirmed whether you're going to be with the company, but they try to give it as a, as a way of trying to make sure that that was the right pick. Some will have to train you on the first day, and we always use orientation as a way of trying to onboarding or welcoming you to the organization. We have different types of training: on the job training, we have off the job training, and most companies are also utilizing the online training. This chart basically is giving you a snapshot of some of the preferences companies use when it comes to recruitment. Again, it's true. For example, what you're seeing is basically showing you that referral is a very key component of human resource management. So again, I'm sure some of you, where you're working today, you got that job through some kind of networking, which most likely could be, a referral. You referred your friend, you referred, a relative, you referred uh, uh, your colleague used to work with. So mostly the referral it's a very important aspect. So what I always tell students all the time is make sure you network either in the classroom know the people in the classroom here or even the workplace, because it's a strong bond that is going to help you. Maybe you never know, help you in the future to get a job. Just and you'll be saying, "Oh, we went to school, we went to the same school, we were in the same classroom, and so on." And that's why sometimes you get some of this position. But there are other ways, of course, recruitment is done, and that is again through the job posting online. There is internal recruiters come on campus for recruitment. There is professional associations, staffing agencies. Again, we have seen some of those, and we have seasonal or temporary to hire engagement and so on. But again, the key idea is just to understand. I think networking is very important. The other process, HR process, is the training and the development. So apart from just the orientation process, where you they welcome you on board, there is also other ways of training employees. Of course, if you've been hired as a new employee, you want to be equipped with the skills and knowledge that you require to perform a particular task. And again, just to ensure that the way this is done is we really have to assess their employee needs or training needs. So you're going to assess the employee needs, and then you're going to design a training module that is going to fit the needs that you've identified. So you don't just come up with a blanket training and you give it to all employees. Again, that's an important aspect. If there was orientation, for example, because orientation is more like, we don't know what you know, but we have a blanket training that we're going to use to train everybody. But in terms of the job specific training, you want to make sure that the employee can perform the job. And to do so, you want to make sure that you equip the employee with the skills they need. And if to do so, you just have to identify their need. Again, this is the individual needs. And then, of course, you have a training uh, plan or program that you're going to design and, of course, implement it. And, of course, after implementing that, you have to assess this either immediately, or you could assess this at some time along the way, just to make sure, again, that training or that training is effective. So, and again, we saw there are so different types of training methods. Employee orientation, on-job training, off the job, and of course the online. Then the other aspect is management development, which involves, again, it's same thing as the training. This involves training and educating employees to improve their performance. So again, you can do this on a continuous basis. Companies use coaching or use mentors. Some companies use job orientation. They move you from one department to another. So this week you work in marketing. Next week maybe they move you to go work in accounting. Maybe next week you go work in engineering. So the point is you rotate the employees to different departments. Again, the good thing about this is as an employee you are able to acquire a diverse skill set. So you're able to acquire marketing skills. You go work in accounting, you acquire the skills there. You go work in engineering there, you acquire skills there. So as they shift you, as they rotate you from one department to another, you are able to acquire skills in different departments. So you come out being strong, having different skill set. That's the good thing about it. Then we have off the job courses and training. Some will be offered through maybe community college or universities, taking some courses, again, just to equip you as an employee. And then the other aspect of human resource management is performance appraisal. This is where, again, is yes, you've been hired, orientation was undertaken, you have been trained, and now you are working for the company. So what companies will do is to undertake a performance appraisal, and even some companies will do this after 90 days. Remember, we said you could be hired but then you're given a probation period of 90 days. If you're given a probation of 90 days, then it means that, close to the 90 days, your manager is going to perform a performance appraisal. It's just to assess, you know, on how you're doing on the job. And this is just one way to confirm that you're going to continue working for the company if you're on probation. If you're not on probation, most companies will undertake performance appraisal on a yearly basis. So every year they undertake a performance appraisal, again, just to assess how you're doing the job. And of course, the objective of this is different, and I'm going to explain that later on. So what we do is we assess the employee based on a certain standards, and these are the same standards that maybe were used to train you. So we measure employees' performance. So first of all, we establish the standards, but you have to make sure that employees understand the standards, because you're not just going to assess employee on something they don't know. So you first of all, you have to make sure that employees are aware of the standards that you use to assess them. So communicate this to the employees and then undertake the assessment, and based on your findings, discuss the results with the employee. And if there's a need to take some corrective measures, please do so. Use the results to make other decisions. So the performance appraisal serves not just to try to find where the employee is as far as performing. We also use the performance appraisal to undertake other decisions. For example, promotions. It could be compensation. For example, you hear about a company, my yearly raise is up. So it could be based on a performance appraisal, you're going to get a pay increase for that particular year, or it might not, depending again on how the company is using it, or it also depends on how you your performance appraisal was. Some companies will use this to give bonuses to employees. Some will use performance appraisal to promote an employee to move up, so that different purposes of performance appraisal. Some will use the performance appraisal to terminate an employee. Again, different purposes of performance appraisal. Now, the caution I always have when it comes to performance appraisal, even though yes is a good tool that we can use to assess where our employees are, the problem or the challenge we have is most of the questionnaire, the questions of of the assessment, or the tool that we're using to do the assessment. The problem is most of them are more subjective, and because of the subjectivity or the nature of the, the tool itself, it's hard really to tell how effective the performance appraisal is, because of, again, because of the subjectivity of the nature of it. Performance appraisal, and there's some questions whether it's an effective way of measuring employees' performance. Again, I could just throw it there for you to think about it, whether, do you think it is really effective if some measures or some items, again, that are more subjective in nature. And to address that issue, let me just take you back, is, as you think about it, is what some companies will do, will have more than just one assessment. So they don't just use one assessment by a manager. Some companies, you'll have your own assessment, and you'll have an assessment coming from maybe the people, your clients, and then they look at three assessments together, or you have two managers assessing you. So the point is, they try to reduce the subjectivity of these tools. Some companies will have to undertake multiple appraisals on the same individual, so that at least it clearly again shows where we are. But again, it's just one way to minimize the subjectivity of the survey, or performance appraisal. Then we have employee retention as part of human resource management. Again, uh, uh, in terms of, again, the key idea of the chapter is, we say it is is finding the best employees, finding and keeping the best employees. So now we have gone through the finding of the best employees through recruitment, selection, orientation, and those performance appraisal. Then we talk about retention, how to keep the employee. Yes, you've hired the employee. How do you make sure that the employee does not leave? Especially you are able to find the best employee. You want to keep the best employee because you don't want to go back through the hiring process again. Because remember, anytime you do it, it is costing the company or the organization money. So you want to hire the best employees and keep the best employees. To keep the best employees, companies will use compensation, various compensation schemes to keep the employees. Some companies will use fringe benefits, sick leave, vacation, healthcare plans, insurance. Some companies will have job sharing where a full-time job is shared by two part-timers, and the reason because the part-time job fits the needs of the individuals much better than a full-time. For example, people with other responsibilities, they rather go for a part-time job than a full-time. So that again could be one way of retaining that part-time employee because that's what fits the schedule. Sometimes we offer flexible schedules, and we talk about core time or a compressed worksheet. The core time is basically a requirement of a time that all employees might be at the workplace, which could be 10 o'clock, could be between 10 and 2 p.m. Employees must be on site. It could be between 1 and 4. It's being the core time, employees must be on site. So some companies have this. So how you come in and how you leave is not a big deal. The deal is between that core time, that period you must be on campus because the requirement if you have that schedule. So it gives employees flexibility in terms of when to come in terms also when to leave, so long as you are available during that core time. Some companies have compressed worksheet. So in other words, instead of you working 5 days, you could work the same hours in 5 days instead of work no in 4 days, sorry. So instead of working 5 days, you work 4 days. Or could be instead of working 4 days, you put this into 3 weeks. So long as again you accommodate all your hours in 3 days, that will be still be okay. So again, some companies will use those kind of system. Again, that by itself it's also a way of retaining employees. And some companies again they're using the work from home, which again is a growing initiative when it comes to retaining employees. And a good example we have seen is what is happening today during that COVID-19 is where now companies are utilizing the work from home where applicable. Again, not everybody can work from home, but some people they do, and therefore it has made these companies to continue to do what they're doing despite the challenges that we're facing at the moment. So again, compensation, you understand what it is. This is basically the pay, how much you're going to pay them, and again, the more you pay employees, the more secure, the more they're going to be there for a long time. So you want to be competitive in the marketplace. So you don't want to be the low paying employees lower than everybody else because if you do so, employees are going to leave, they go somewhere. So you want to give them a competitive salary or wages, give them other incentives so that again you're competitive in the marketplace. And some companies will give other financial securities like you know the 401k match, retirement schemes. Uh, so all this is geared towards in trying to retain the employees. Again, we talk about the scheduling, work from home, job sharing, compressed worksheet, and uh, core time, and so on. And you can see what this chart is basically showing you is the one that is more prevalent again is the employees schedule their own vacation. Again, employees like it. And then, of course, they permit time off to deal with personal issues. So there's so many ways that these organizations are trying to make, you know, this more flexible on the side of employees. So yes, some provide a daycare on the site. Some even pay for daycare outside. Anywhere else they cover 50%, whatever it is. So they're trying to be as much flexible as they can in trying again to incentivize and also to keep employees. So that's all what I wanted to say about the chapter. But more information about this, just make sure to review the text and let me know if you have any questions. But lastly, I just want to address that we talk about recruitment, selection, and trying to retain employee. But sometimes it comes to a point where it's not possible to keep the employee. You have to let them go. It could be one example where termination becomes at play. The other one could be retirement. The other one also resignation or promotion or reassignment. So make sure understand also there is movement where employees can decide to retire or resign, or they don't perform as per the standards, and you've tried to keep them, you've tried to coach them, you've tried to train them, and nothing's really helping, and therefore at that point you have no choice but to try to let them go, which again is an HR issue. And again, there's a human side to it. But again, as a company, you have goals to achieve. Sometimes you find it's a challenging moment to terminate an employee, but it's part of HR management. Just like recruitment is, just like the promotion is, and so on. So as you think about the chapter, let's close down by saying, you know, in terms of recruitment, ask yourself a few questions and try to find answer to them. So for example, why should a company promote employees from within? That's again becomes an internal sourcing. Early retirement or termination, which one do you prefer? You know, Again, you have seen some people go for early retirement. We have seen some people leave the company, or you have to let them go and they go somewhere else. So all these are HR issues. And as said before, we cannot cover everything in one simple topic. For example, we didn't even get into the regulations that cover human resource management. Like for example, the age discrimination, equal pay, Civil Rights Act Title 7. We didn't even look at that. So just understand that, or minimum wage. So just understand that so many legal issues, and the chapter is also broad. So make sure to cover this in your text as a supplementary, and just to make sure that you understand what human resource is all about. So let me know if you have any questions, but I look forward in seeing you in my next video, which will be chapter 12.